All right, good. So we're good to go. So you go and do your clap specialty, sir.
Okay, my clap thing, right? Okay, ready?
Yeah.
3. Well, we got one go at this, Ralph. Come on. Right. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, I've got an idea. I'll join you this time as well. Let's both do it.
Yeah, good idea. Okay.
Okay, ready? Yeah.
Ready? 3, 2,
2,
1.
1. Oh, dude, man. What kind of 3, 2, 1 was that?
Welcome to the podcast again, to another episode of No Code Rules, a very, 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 very special episode due to the guests that we have on, and I'll let Raf take it away. You can do the introductions.
Well, first, let me introduce you. This is obviously Gareth. He's a techie, middle-aged Englishman who is bespectacled this week, as we are. This is our new theme this week. You know, I'm going for more like the points of view kind of look. Remember that TV show? Points of view. So, anyway, Gareth is a coder for many, many, many years, and obviously he's now a guru in the whole no-code space. Now, please do a good job on my intro. Please go for it. Go for it. Go for it. I can't wait to hear.
Indeed, this is Raphael, who is a non-techie founder who has no background in coding or software development, discovered no code, and he's now excellent at it, and he absolutely loves it. Okay, brilliant. Now then, the rest is up to you, Raf. By the way, I will say, sorry, in the last episode, I said I was actually under the weather. That turned out to be complete COVID, which floored me for a little bit. So, unfortunately, it's still left me with a lingering lingering cough. And the more I seem to speak, the worse the cough gets. So I do apologize. Yeah. So I might leave a lot of the talking to you, Raf, if that's okay.
No problem at all.
We'll chime in when necessary.
Well, we've been excited about this episode for a while because it's actually a bit of a coup for us because we've managed to have two very special guests with us today. And they're both the co-founders of a platform that we're becoming more and more familiar with and falling more and more in love with every day, which is Toddle itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the wonderful Andreas and Kasper, who join us from somewhere in Central Europe. Hi, guys.
Hey, nice to meet you again.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Firstly, can I just comment on the wonderful things you have there in the background? I think they look absolutely beautiful. I've noticed as well, Kasper, it's on your microphone as well. I'm loving the toddle love that's been spread. In fact, Gareth, I think it makes our backgrounds look decidedly average. I think we need to up our set game.
Throwing a bit of a plant in the background, you know, you can't look at what these fellas have done.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute privilege for us, obviously, to kind of get to meet you guys and understand, hopefully, a little bit more of the backstory of Toddle, where you guys are at right now, and all that kind of stuff. So let's just jump right in. In terms of Toddle, firstly, who are you? How did you meet, and how did Toddle come to be?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll start that one. My name's Andreas, and I am a co-founder of Toddle, as it says in my title here. Toddle sort of came out of my head, of me trying to figure out how I could improve initially my own way of working. I'm a long-time software engineer, been building web apps for the last 20 years or so now. And sort of, especially in the last couple of years, I've had more and more of this sort of frustration with a lot of the way we build applications today, especially the very code-heavy approach to building UI, which always felt a little bit, off, especially seeing how designers get to build beautiful things in Figma, but then they hand it over to us, and then they go, please rebuild the whole thing from scratch in code. So I kind of wanted to figure out how can I create a tool, or can I create a tool initially that lets me build the kind of application I'm used to building, which is anything from startup or scale up SaaS companies to all the way to enterprise. But it's always kind of applications where you're focused on building something that can scale, building something that's performant, and where you're building generally with a whole team of designers and developers. So Toddle is very much focused on that segment. We sometimes refer to it as the more professional end of no code. Like, how do you take this to go mainstream? How do you take your no-code app to the sort of next level or next scale, right? And Kasper, who I'll do a quick intro to until you can continue yourself, is we actually went to the same university and lived in the same dormitory at the time, but sort of randomly ran into each other on the street, and I started talking about Toddle because I always talk about Toddle to everyone all the time. And he was very hooked, which was quite interesting because Kasper comes from a kind of different background. So maybe you want to introduce yourself, Kasper.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name is Kasper, and I'm the second co-founder of Toddle, and I'm a designer by trade. I have been building sort of web apps, native apps, and websites, and so on for 10-ish years, I reckon. And yeah, I stumbled into Andreas, my longtime mate from back in the days, and he was rambling about this nice platform he just made where you can build proper apps without writing code. And yeah, sure, Andreas, sure. And then he actually showed me, and within 1 or 2 nanoseconds, I said, yes, I want to join in on this. This is awesome. This is what I'm looking for the last 10 years. Because as a designer, I'm used to make my lovely, beautiful designs in Figma or whatever. And then the process sort of dictates that I hand it over to a developer who, for some reason, always messes it up in some way or the other. And yeah, and that's sort of the process. You spend your entire day pushing pixels, and then you hand it over, and then it ends up completely different than you thought out. And you might be able to laugh at the developers. Why are you not doing proper design, and why are you not implementing my design one-to-one as it is? And while building Turtle, I sort of realized why. Because designers are not really good at designing, basically. We are good at sort of creating the pictures, good at making something beautiful, but we often forget the entire flows, the different states, the hover states, the empty input fields, and so on. And while building Turtle, I actually became aware that, oh my God, I'm a rubbish designer. I have nothing. I don't really design the entire process. I just design the beautiful face of it. So yeah, I was immediately on board when Andreas proposed this lovely solution back in the day.
See, that's an interesting point, because obviously you're coming from the design perspective, Andreas, you're coming from more the coding, like, website and app building perspective. How has the process of founding Toddle transformed your understanding of each other's roles in the whole, app creation process?
Yeah, I could continue here with my story before, because yeah, as I mentioned, designers are not really designers in my eyes, because we need this sort of view into the craftsmanship of building applications. And this experience building Turtle has really sort of shifted my focus and maybe turned me into sort of a designer / semi-developer in some way, because I'm exposed to the actual code, in quotes, by the way, and I'm actually forced to deal with long strings, silly breakpoints, and so on. So yeah, I'm shifting more to becoming a developer, you might say.
So you're beginning to have more empathy and sympathy for guys like Andreas, when they're like, well, why doesn't it look like the way I designed it? Yeah. And what about you, Andreas? Yeah. How has it kind of changed your perspective in terms of, what designers are doing, all that kind of stuff?
I think the biggest thing is probably that I feel like I have a much better understanding and a closer work relationship with Kasper than I really ever had before with designers I've worked with. I've always had a massive amount of respect for the work they did, but there's also always been maybe not friction, but issues around working as a development designer, right? And I think being able to break down that barrier a little bit and say, well, there isn't this clean handoff where you draw up what this looks like and then I go and implement it. And then I go back and ask a bunch of questions about what is it intended to do in this case, which obviously you couldn't have predicted because you haven't actually worked with any of the running software, right? So the process we have and how we work together is quite different than what I'm used to, which is all for the better, right? So I think that's probably the biggest change we've seen. Like that's been the biggest sort of break from from any sort of situation I've been in before. Right.
And I think what's interesting as well, obviously, you guys, which I think makes Toddle quite unique, you're actually building Toddle in Toddle itself. So rather than kind of like, going into your various laboratories and concocting this code or coming up with this design stuff, you're actually using the platform itself to develop the platform. Talk a bit about how that kind of works in a practical sense. So say, for example, Andreas comes up with an idea, I want to implement, something from a design perspective, this way, and how does that kind of work in a practical sense?
Yeah. So I'm happy to start on that one. So first of all, the reason why Toddle is built in Toddle, there's basically a few different ones. The initial reason was that I was working on this project and I needed to build a project that was quite large in order to validate, at that time, mostly to myself, that the basic ideas I have around how Toddle should work were actually solving the problem, right? That I hadn't overlooked something that was going to be a massive problem once the application started growing, right? And really Toddle itself was the obvious choice, because otherwise I would have to spend like a couple of months building software in Toddle just as a demo, or I could spend that time building the actual editor and adding features to it.
Yeah.
At the same time, also we had some issues around performance, spending a lot of time making sure React, which the first version was written in, stayed performance when there's a ton of the editor is a very complex piece of software. There's a lot of things on the screen at the same time. So there's a lot of different components you need to keep track of, and React isn't really designed for that case. So you kind of need to do a lot of performance optimization all the time. And actually switching to Toddle made that a lot easier.
And that, can I just jump in on that as well? Because when you spoke earlier on about building apps and stuff, what were the main technologies you were using in terms of your background in the whole industry? And how did Toddle kind of grow out of that? What similarities does it bear to the stuff you've used, and how is it different as well?
So I've used all of the frameworks at some point, like all of the major ones. There's a couple of new ones I haven't had time to dive into recently, but React, Angular, Vue, I've worked with all of them at some point, and a few of the ones that came before. And Toddle is very much a no-code expression of that same idea. So if you look at it from a bit of a high level, all the frameworks essentially work the same way. They're all focused around building components that are relatively easy to understand on their own. It's easy to implement, and then you can combine multiple components into building something more complex. And so everything around how components work in Toddle is a direct sort of transfer, or completely grab that from how they work in either Vue, Angular, or React.
Right.
So all I did was then translate that into a no-code world.
That makes sense. And then Kasper, for you as well, like this whole idea of when you want to implement something from a design perspective within Toddle, because you're building within Toddle, how does that practically work and look for you?
Yeah, first of all, I learned to build Toddle while building Toddle, so my learning curve was rather steep when I first entered this project. But again, it was way easier to have Andreas explain me the ways of development through this visual interface, because I have been trying to do something in HTML and plain code and so on, and I was always sort of blocked by the many curly and hard brackets and so on. What on earth are we talking about here? So yeah, learning the ways of development through this interface was way easier and helped me a lot while building Toddle. But yeah, on a day-to-day basis, when we want to implement a new feature in Toddle, there's sort of two ways of doing it. Either I start out with something, a design in Toddle, and I mock it up, and I maybe include Andreas for some of the harder parts if I want to have a specific, I don't know, API call or whatever, and then I maybe talk to Andreas about it and try to implement it. And then the other way that's quite fun for a designer is that to have Andreas sort of put down the foundation of a particular feature, and then go in afterwards as a designer and just clean it up and apply the makeup, you might say. That's a very zen experience for a designer, being able to sort of polish the actual feature and making it better bit by bit. That's pretty cool.
Brilliant. Gareth, I just realized I've been monopolizing the entire conversation.
No, it's only best that I've been falling about in a fit of coughing if I'd spoke too much. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that have been said there. The one thing is Andreas have finally, well, no, actually, it's Kasper. You said I'm now sympathetic for the developers. That's a tough ask, because in my many years' experience, very few people are sympathetic to what we do. And secondly, is it to actually find somebody that Andreas, that you've got an idea for, and right away you've got somebody, a partner who's as passionate and as committed to it as you have. Because again, in my years' experience, I've struggled to find anybody who was ever as passionate about the ideas that I had as I was. So I think you've been very fortunate there. Maybe the universe has aligned for you, shall we say? There we go. I knew it would come at some point. But I was having a chat with you, Andreas, a couple of weeks ago, and what was interesting for me was the technology behind it, in terms of that you were saying to me that you'd almost replaced all of the code that you need to work with day to day now with just purely working in Toddle. But the one thing that was really key to all this is that the runtime. I was wondering if you could, so in terms of this thing, I do apologize. Toddle does not fight or spit out code. So can you just tell me a little bit about that side of it? Sorry to get a bit techie, but I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get a bit nerdy. I think that's fine. Yeah, so Toddle is kind of an integrated platform that combines what is essentially a proprietary programming language, which is Toddle itself, along with an editor for programming that language, then a version control system, so multiple people can work on the same thing at the same time without like stepping on each other's toes, and finally a deployment and hosting system provider, right? So everything is built into one platform. And when you build the whole end-to-end tech stack, there's some opportunities there that you otherwise wouldn't have. So in a code world, usually different companies or different developers do each part of this. So you host your code on GitHub, you might deploy it on Vercel, Netlify, or Amazon Web Services. And all of these can communicate and they work fairly well together, but it's not the same team, and all of them are built for more than one technology. So by us integrating everything into one stack here, there's a lot of optimization and benefits we get from that. And that's especially relevant in no-code, because some of the really hard things for building, let's say, a React app, is to make sure that you have that performance, not just when you start the project, but also when you're 6 months to a year down the line, right? As you build more and more, performance tends to go down, right? And we want to avoid that. So we need, by actually understanding the fact that our hosting system and how these apps are being served up to the end user, the fact that that system understands in detail how each app operates and how it works, because it's the same system, means we can do a lot of performance optimization on our end that the user actually never have to think about. That also means that we are not generating, like when you press publish, we are not generating code directly. We are storing all your Toddle applications in a format that we can have in our database, and that we can easily cache on all our, we use a large edge network with, I think, however many Cloudflare has, like 280 data centers all over the world, and they can cache everything locally so that it really quickly can render just exactly the page you need. And all of that was built from scratch specifically for Toddle, like to work in this way. We're not based on any existing JavaScript frameworks. They're all optimized for coding, and therefore actually doesn't provide a lot of benefit in this case. So everything is built specifically for this use case, right?
And then a slight trivia question. Sorry, Gav, a slight trivia question. So you said you've built this all from scratch. How long have you guys actually been doing this? How long has Toddle been in existence?
I think we're coming up on, like, since I started working on the project, obviously this was a hobby project for the first 4 years.
Yeah.
And so we launched almost exactly. Well, we didn't launch. We founded the company almost a year ago now.
Wow.
And so until then, we worked part time, mainly nights and weekends on this. The first sort of couple of years actually was just me trying out different ideas and see what would work. So there are, since you have to build a platform that caters to basically everything, right? I don't know what you're going to build, right? You need something that's both flexible enough to handle anything, but at the same time, flexibility is what code has an abundance of. Like you can do literally anything, including an infinite way of making something that doesn't work. So you have to limit, but you have to figure out what to limit and how to limit people's options, right?
Yeah.
And that took a lot of basically trial and error for several years on what is the right way we think to do this. Right?
And then
it has been a long time coming. Yeah.
But and then as a result of that, when someone signs up to Toddle and they create a free account and they kind of come into the editor, what should they expect to find that makes Toddle different from some of the other no-code solutions out there, both from a building perspective, but also maybe Kasper, you could kind of touch on the whole design system perspective and how that kind of all works to kind of create the Toddle experience.
Yeah, so the brief from Andreas was that we try to stick as close to the web standards as possible. So we're not trying to hide anything. We're just trying to explain things better in a more sort of humane way. So yes, we are calling it a div container and we are calling it attributes and so on. There's sort of an entry barrier to actually learning what that is, but that is done on purpose because we want you to be able to actually get the proper coding terminology, you might say. And that was a bit of a hard learning curve for me to actually get those expressions in place. But once you have them sort of figured out, it makes sense down the line. It's hard to start, but the benefits are so much bigger down the line. We try to make it more humane on the eyes. We try to put down some bright colors to brighten your day, I might say. But again, we are sticking to the standards. We want you to be able to learn the ins and outs of proper web development.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So I would like to add there, like what Kasper is saying is that we stuck close to a lot of the web standards. So we didn't, while we did invent a lot of new things in terms of how Toddle works, what we kept was the basic technologies that makes the web great. So HTML, CSS, these are languages, but you don't need to be able to understand how the syntax of these languages in Toddle. Though when you're learning Toddle, you're also learning HTML. So you understand what all of the different things do. You would be able to take that knowledge if you wanted to write HTML in some case. If you needed that, you would understand how that worked. You would understand how to do that after. And the same with CSS. How do you do layout in that system? Is all the same in Toddle. And it's honestly because we think it's really good. Like it's not just for convenience, but it's also because we think it's a really good system that has worked for like several decades now. But it also has a lot of benefits when it comes to things like performance and things like adoption, right? A lot of people already know. And I think that the important thing is that you are still learning, right? I think we always try to make it as simple as possible, but not simpler. So we're not ever really dumbing it down, but we are simplifying as much as we can in order to build a. Oh, go.
So go ahead and finish your point. Sorry, I'm just enjoying switching you out. I've got the power today. I got the power. Sorry, go ahead. You're simplifying it, but not dumbing it down.
Yeah.
Good job, Rafi.
Why, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
But so, I mean, if you want to build a website that has great SEO performance, like it works really well with search engines, and also that supports basic accessibility, so people who are using either screen readers or assisted tooling can navigate this, which is one of the really great things about the web, is actually there's a lot of tooling for helping a lot of people do this, both like the search engines for indexing, but also people who are using assisted technologies. All that's built into the web platform, and you can build really great experience for people who have some sort of disability. But you do need to know basics around the different HTML elements. What is their meaning? What is their purpose? And how to use them to get there. Right? So if people don't know that, there isn't really any way for us to simplify that away, right? We can't remove that. So that's an area where we would rather educate than just to ignore that as a problem, right? Because if you want to building apps of the highest quality, there are some things you need to consider. Not all of it from day one, but you need to be able to consider these things. And actually, as a developer, you need to be able to work with that in Toddle.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And go on, Gareth. So you had to follow up on that.
Yeah, there's just a couple of things that you mentioned there that really hit home to me that I think you've made absolutely the right choices. The first one is that it is, and I know you probably didn't start off from day one saying I'm going to write a no-code tool, but the fact of the matter is that it is no code. And actually, despite all the noise that's being made around, sorry, I shouldn't make.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. But, I want to export my code, and it's only by exporting my code am I going to be truly free. And all of this sort of thing, to me, is an absolute nonsense. As someone who has written code, is the best way to lock your business value down is to write code, because the minute there's a technology shift, that business value that you built into that code is now dead as a doornail. Dead as a doornail. So for me, I think the approach that you've taken is absolutely the right one with that. And the other thing is sticking to web standards. As you know, I came from Bubble, and after years of coding, I went through Bubble and then come to Toddle. And within about sort of a couple of hours looking around, I'm like, right, okay, this is. I know this. This is. I struggled a little bit with your formula editor for a little bit, but then once that clicked, I mean that just sends you into raptures. Really, once you get into that, once you learn how to press the space bar and drag things around, then that's that certainly helped, most definitely. I've got to be honest with you. I'll leave the questions to you, Raf. I'd ask 1,000,001 techie questions that probably better.
One thing I'm curious about, because we have to wrap up soon, but one thing I'm curious about Kasper as well, just from the design perspective, like when it comes to the way Toddle deals with design systems, because this obviously is something that's really kind of gathered pace in the design community in the last few years. Everyone kind of moving more towards this atomic type approach to design and all that kind of stuff. And so how does that work in Toddle, and in terms of the way it's currently, and in terms of what you have plans for the platform moving forwards?
Yeah, and we actually forgot to talk about one of the biggest things, biggest benefit of Toddle is our customization, our options, our customizability. Yeah, that might be the word. You're actually able to tweak everything within Toddle itself, and that's sort of the way it's built. That's our philosophy, but that comes with sort of a downside as well, because you have to build your system from the ground up. Basically, you have to be hands-on on every part of your project, you might say. So you are building your buttons, you are building your components, you are basically shaping your entire application using this atomic design system. And that's done on purpose, because we want you to have the ability to tweak anything to your likings. We do have some sort of power features. We have our style variables, or design tokens, you might call them, depending on who you are. So you're able to sort of lock down your colors, lock down your fonts, and so on. So it's easier to build up your UI library going forward.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think as well, Andreas, you kind of touched on this, that the whole learning curve coming in, which I think there's a learning curve really irrespective of what platform you kind of jump into. But because the stuff you guys, or because Toddle's been built so close to web standards, yes, there is some type of a learning curve. But what I think is incredible is once you kind of get in there and get used to stuff, you realize that this platform is incredibly powerful. And I think you guys have been incredibly modest as well in terms of, talking about the real benefit and the real value and the real power of the platform. And maybe, Gareth, you could just touch on that really quickly, because obviously you've, like Andreas, you've kind of had that whole kind of, coding experience and had to write every single line of code you came to Toddle. I remember when you told me about Toddle, you was like, Raf, you've got to check this out. This is like amazing. I was like, okay, dude, I'll do it. But can you talk about the power of the platform? Because, for example, the other day you guys just launched a custom code feature. So if you want to expand your application with code, whether it's JavaScript or all that kind of stuff, you can also do that. So there are all these things there that when you walk in, you're like, okay, here's the editor, but you may not understand how powerful it really can be. And you can do everything from a very simple application, which I think you guys have some demo apps that you can kind of use and kind of come and clone, very simple things to incredibly complex things. So Gareth, can you just quickly like touch on how powerful the platform is? Because I think these guys are just a little bit too modest to say themselves.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I first came in, just before you put it into public beta, I remember sort of, it takes you a little bit, it's a couple of hours just to play around with it, and all of a sudden you're like, you just get that feeling like, oh wow, and actually it's night and day compared to where we were in May when you first launched the public beta sort of 6 months ago, and the custom code thing just takes it to another level. However, I will say, with the custom formulas, I struggle to find anything to write code for that I couldn't actually do just with the formula builder. You could, like you say, things like session storage and anything you need to pull out of the browser and things like that. But in terms of the the formulas that you can write, which is really, to me, coming maybe just because of my background, that's the heart of Toddle. That's the real kind of, and again, I'm not a designer, that kind of is, that's my background is code. So to me, there's not really anything you can't do with that. And it's just a case of, what's been amazing for me is to see the platform evolve. And it's really great to see how now it's growing as well. Because for a long time, it was just me, Raf, and a few others. You just seem to be enthused with this. But now lots of other people are coming in. It's great that it's growing. I think that's really important. I think maybe the perspective that I don't have that you have, Raf, really is more about somebody coming in from scratch. It perhaps needs to, needs to learn a lot of stuff from scratch, including, as we've discussed, web standards.
Yeah, well, I think in a strange way, probably the four of us on this episode, we kind of typify the different types of people that actually might really benefit from Toddle. Over here we have Andreas, the serial app website builder with decades worth of experience, seconded only by Gareth with a similar type background.
No, I've never done anything on this scale. Believe you me, I'm not putting myself in the same bracket as Andreas. I'm a journeyman compared to Andreas.
But then we have Kasper, who obviously comes from a design background and is then, as a result, now building apps. And then you've got someone like yours truly, who has had absolutely zero experience from a coding perspective, or even the design perspective, who's trying to find his way. And I think what's really interesting is that, in a strange way, this seems to be who Toddle is built for. All of us. If you've built apps before, and again, maybe I put that to you kind of in closing, like who do you think would be most suited to kind of come in and explore in Toddle and seeing what's capable of, and what should they expect when they get there? And then I've got one final question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there's a very narrow profile where we have a very specific use case. I think it appeals to many people. We for a long time said that our ICP, or initial customer profile, is middle-aged Englishmen, it seems. Especially, but it does go much broader than that. And you're absolutely right. It's not. We have designers getting a lot of value on the platform. We have engineers, long-time coders, getting a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, no coders getting into it. We have all sorts. Our head of marketing, we hired less than 2 months ago, is building our new partnership site in Toddle. The fact that he can open up the editor, understand how our product works at a level that he's never been able to in any other tech company he's worked in, makes a huge difference, right? You're now bringing a product understanding to the whole team that probably wasn't at all possible in a code world, or required an enormous amount of work on the dev team to present this in a way and educate in a way where people could understand it. So it is definitely a bit for everyone. I would say that there are some limits, as you say. There's a learning curve. There's also a certain level of commitment. I think there are great no-code tools for getting stuff done real quick, as long as you're willing to stay within the parameters they set for you. And there's some really good tools for that. Wix for building very simple website obviously is great, right? Webflow is fantastic when you want to go a little bit more deep, but are not in the workflow or sort of app space, as you say. And I think what separates Toddle a lot of times is that for most people, building in Toddle is more or less a full-time job. So it is specifically minded for people who are building applications that are on the slightly more complex or long-living end of the spectrum. So if you're looking for like getting an app out, like learning a tool and getting an app out in a week or less than a month, there are probably other tools that would be a better fit. But if this is something you want to build a business around or something you want to invest in, then it is a tool for you, for sure.
Fantastic. And then to kind of wrap things up, like, so what's next? Like, Toddle is where it is right now, but what's next on the horizon for the platform?
Kasper, do you want to?
Yeah, the thing is, in order for you to truly learn the power of Toddle, you need to learn it from someone or learn it together with some other people. And we are opening up for a better sort of community sharing platform. So if Gareth builds a component, it should be easy for you, Raphael, to import it in your project and customize it and so on. So we are taking our component sharing and our community features to the next level in the coming months or so, because we want to see this platform really grow, and that's done by combining components made by multiple people. So yeah, that's the next step. Community sharing in a better way. And I'm not going to say any more. I'm especially not going to say marketplace, and I'm especially not going to say any more features built around that. But yeah, we want to be able to have tools shared between users going forward in a nice manner.
Brilliant. Excellent. Gareth, do you want to add anything to that before we kind of thank these guys for their time?
No, obviously I've fallen in love with this. I'm going to say this thing again. I've fallen in love with Toddle. It's a credit to you, and yeah, I can't say enough good things really. Obviously, nothing's perfect. Things can evolve, but you know that, and it's come so far in the last 6 months. It's crazy how far it's come. So we've got complete trust in you guys that you're going to continue to do it. As I said, when you were going to the No Code Summit, don't all of you get on the same train again or the same plane, just in case, you know. but no, I mean, really, thank you guys for an absolutely awesome tool, especially for us who found ourselves in a bad situation, having spent years learning one particular no-code tool who shall remain unnamed. And you came to our rescue with something special, especially sort of around the with the components, which nothing else has. Reminded me of my old Vue days, and yeah, it's an awesome tool. And unfortunately, I will sit here and wax lyrical about it all day, because I really do. I really enjoy it. It's not just powerful and really good, and you can build anything in it. It's also fun to sit down and spend your days in, and I think that's really where it wins for me. As you may or may not know, I'm presently doing a client project that's not in Toddle, that's in another tool, and it's nowhere near as much fun. I can tell you that for a kick. So thank you so much for Toddle. I really appreciate it.
And thank you guys. And if you're watching this and you don't know about Toddle, please go to the website and check out. You can create a free account, go check out some of the demo projects, and then kind of get stuck in. Also as well, one thing we did mention in wrapping up is how fantastic the Discord community is as well. So if you do create an account, jump into the Discord community. Any questions or stuff that you have, there's always someone popping up there. You guys are busy in there as well, which is actually fantastic. So thank you so much, guys, for your time. We appreciate it. Thank you for the insight and perspective. And Gareth, we need to up our set game for the next episode, okay? Because those things are looking
yeah. And our scheduling game as well.
Cool. Guys, thanks again.
Guys.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Take care.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Was that okay?
Is that okay for you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely,
fantastic.
definitely. Yeah.
That was perfect.